It's yet another day to decorate an amazingly gorgeous 5-layered cake together. Let's go. And just before we continue, allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Femi Shade, and I'm the creative director behind the brand called Femi's Desserts Veil. Today, I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to be achieving a tall and slim design of a 5-layered 8 inches cake. I'll be showing you the fillings I'll be using. I'll be showing you, definitely I'm going to be using the stable whipped cream as always. I'll be showing you how I'm going to be stacking it all up together and trimming, and how I'll be tossing it together with doll roll at the end to give it structure, and just basically everything you need to know to be able to successfully decorate that kind of cake when it's your turn to do so. Come along with me like I said earlier, and let's go. So the first filling I'm using on the first layer is a caramel sauce, precisely the toffee caramel sauce. It's homemade, and I already have a video of it uploaded on my channel, right? So you can always watch that. So I always like to use the smooth and the crunchy fillings as always. So I'm going to be using that together with some crushed cookies to give you that extra crunch. Okay, and just try to pat it in firmly so that I can actually blend in properly into the layer before I add up the second layer. And this time around, after getting the edges breached like this with some cream, I would still go on to pipe some more around the edges of the cake, because I have some particular layers of the cake where the filling is going to be a bit runny, and I wouldn't want them to run around the sides of the cake. So you need to seal it up with a cage like piping technique like this, and then it's firm, and you're very sure that you're not going to get your filling running around the sides of the cake or running off the layers of the cake. So after this, now I'm going to be working with the vanilla cake layer going on top of it. Okay, so I've slapped on some cream on the second layer of cake. Now we're going to be using the berry filling right here. This particular filling is called the berry compote filling cream, so I'm going to be using this over this layer, and that's part of the reason why I decided to do the piping cage, because of how soft this filling is, and particularly because I'm not even going to be using, it's a fruit filling by the way, so it's a combination of mixed berries, and then I'm not going to be adding any crunch to it because it is fine in its original state, but you all can see that it's already trying to run around the sides, and that's why very importantly you have to like bridge it with the piping cage, so that even when it gets to that point, it just stops right there. It doesn't exceed that part. I'm going to be doing that. So I don't do this all the time. I only do it when I specifically have to work with a feeling like this. And then I just still go on to spread it by myself so that it limits how it spreads by itself. So that I can try the best I can to control the spreading tendencies. Yeah. So that's it right there. And then so it's easy for me to just pipe a little bit on top of it again, just so that it can give it the fastening effect on the third layer. So I'm going to just leave that at the center, and then I'm going to go in with the second layer of the red velvet. I'm going with this is it right here. So I will just place this gently on top, just like this, get it leveled, and to avoid having to chop up too much at the end, I'm going to be leveling it out like you see now, so that the cream is going to sit directly on this part of the cake. And then I'm rest assured that I get to have the cream sinking into the cake better than if I was reusing the moist surface. I've explained this time and time again in my previous videos, but for emphasis sake, I'm saying it again. So once you do this, you're almost 99% sure that your cake is not going to slip in transit, or just try to fall off shape. So I always create this indentation in the middle of my cake so that the cream doesn't go directly on the surface. It goes in a little bit. And then for this particular red velvet layer, I would be using my coconut cream. This is also homemade. This is a very, very delicious coconut cream that has some coconut crunch, as you all can see. So I just put it in the center, and then go in with some crushed Oreo cookies, because you all know how so much I love it when I have the smooth and crunchy fillings. in this case we already have the coconut crunchy, but for some extra crunch, it is always a good idea. So again, I'll just pipe a quick bridge around this one as well. The reason why I'm doing it all around, despite the fact that this particular layer doesn't have a running texture of filling, is because to give it a defined result, you all don't want some parts to have a defined piping edge and the other layers would not. So I do this to make sure that everything is well evenly distributed and there's a particular kind of consistency even when you cut through the cake. Okay, so this is what this looks like. Tell you what, this particular filling that I use on this layer is an absolute banger, really. So now, going very quickly, this is another layer of vanilla buttermilk cake. Fun fact is, all of these cake flavors you're seeing in this video have all been uploaded previously on my YouTube channel. So you have the very, right, you have all the right to just go on the page, on the channel rather, to surf on the page and just look up all of these recipes, watch them, learn, and just try them out. All of these recipes are very tested and trusted and very foolproof, and you can be sure that when you try them out, you are gonna get a very, very good result. I mean, if you follow every step and trick and tip that I instruct in each of the videos. So right about now, this is the fourth layer of the cake, and just the way we have been doing, this is the same thing we're doing all over again. So this right here is my dark chocolate fudge homemade filling cream, as you see now, and I'm just going to be using it. You can see how so thick this is. So this is going directly over the cake. Then I will still need to get like an additional tool to get everything out of the palette knife. I just give it a firm press, very firm press. Okay, like this. And then not necessarily spread through, but just like this. And then I'll add, of course, the extra crunch, which is the chocolate, some crushed chocolates. So again, goes in. And then again, try to get everything out. And then just get a little bit for the center. That's right before we go in with the bridge piping once again. And then the last layer will be going over the cake now. Yeah. So at this point, the next thing we're going to be doing is to get this well tilted into the center point of the cake. Ordinarily, I should use like something to cut this, but they're not so strong, so it's just for some extra inner support. Okay, so because of the height of the cake, I will be going in with this 2 times. I mean, that gives you the very much guarantee you need and the assurance and the peace of mind, knowing that everything is right on point and very solid in structure. So I will just simply just use the bottom of the knife to just get this all well stuck inside. Okay, so right before I start trimming the cake, because I need to actually trim the cake to make sure that all of the sides are well evened out, and then it can guarantee me a better smooth or better defined side of cake also from beginning to the end. I will just try to add some patches of some of the cake that I cut off, just so that I can make sure that I reduce the quantity or the much gaps that we have in between the layers that would actually eventually level out when we conclude the cake, as well as when we have the final result. So right now I'm just going to start trimming the cake, starting from no particular angle. I'll just pick the most convenient for me, and I just go in this pattern, going very gently, so that I don't stand the risk of over trimming the cake and having to look for how to add to it again or repatch it or something. So it's actually better when you go gently. And for me, trimming of my cakes takes the most of the time, because when your cakes are well trimmed, you are very much guaranteed of a good result. I mean 90%. except for some other factors that might play out. But ordinarily, if you have your straight sides, it defines your design better, gives you a better outlook and a better professional look. You wouldn't have bulges or dents here and there. And because of that, I always take my time to get every cake, or I mean most of my cakes, trimmed out, just as you see me do now. And then of course when I'm done with this, I'll be showing you what the result looks like before we pop it into the freezer for about an hour thereabout to get it firmed up before we now go on to add the second and final coating on the cake. So this is what the cake looks like right after trimming and patching. And then I'm going to go on to crumb coat now using the same whipped cream by just simply applying a very light coating on it, which I'm going to be returning to the freezer like I already illustrated until well set for me to put the final coating on top. I'm already done covering the second time now. This is what it looks like. So I'll just give it a quick sweep using my smooth scraper I seen on the table to even it out and smoothen around the sides. Because take note that this is not the final coating like I already said earlier, but it's already coming together nicely. And note that I always use my offset spatula just because I don't want any part of the palette knife to like indent on the cake, because the other one I always use is shorter. So when I'm working with tall cakes, I tend to use this particular one because number one is it's taller in height, and number two, it prevents this part from touching the cake. And then that's what I don't want, so that I don't have any scratches or any flaws on the cake body. So at this point now, I'll just try to give it a quick sweep with this particular scraper. This is a steel scraper and works perfectly with cream cakes like this. So I will just hold it like this and try and give it a quick sweep. Note that this is not the final coating like I said, and you cannot typically get a smooth side at the first sweep. So that's what I'm doing. See, so I will just still add up some more cream to fill up those gaps. So what I'm trying to do at this point is just to fill up all those patches that look shorter, or those parts that look like the cream isn't well distributed there, before I give it a second run. So the idea is to just keep going until you get your final perfect results. For me, I don't stop until I'm very satisfied. You can ignore this part, okay? Remember, it is just supposed to be a thin second coating as well. So even if that part is a bit exposed, everything is still going to fall into perfect shape once I apply the final coating. Okay, so I'm done with the second covering now, and then I will return it into the freezer and be back in a tiny little bit to show you what it looks like, and then to cover it finally. Okay, so for the particular cake I'm working on now, I'm going to be using an isomalt sail on the cake as one of the intricate designs I'll be going on the cake surface on the top. So I want to teach you very quickly how to achieve this in just a few minutes. So a typical isomalt comes in granules form and sometimes comes in powdered form, okay? But this is the granules version, and all you need to do is just to melt it over low heat. And then when you melt it over low heat, if you want it to be a clear isomalt, it just comes up as a clear, like a glass kind of, like a decor piece that's going to be like a glass, okay? But for today, I'm going to be working with a dark shade, something close to black and something close to gray, okay? And so before I go on, at the get-go like this, right before I place it on the heat, I'm going to have to add a little bit of black color. It could be the powdered color, it could be the paste color or the liquid color, but it's always very safe to either use the powdered or the paste color so that it doesn't run off or affect the structure of the isomalt eventually, like the result, okay? So for now, what I'm just going to do is, and for your isomalt, you don't need any additional additive aside the original isomalt. So whatever quantity you need is going to be determined by how big your cake is. So for this cake, it's going to be sitting on an 8 inches cake, so I'm going to be needing basically about 150 grams of isomalt granules, which are already measured behind the camera. So this is what it looks like. So I'll just go ahead to add a little bit of, just a tiny little bit of black powdered color This is edible color, by the way, just a little bit, because a little too much and it's going to be so black. So just a little bit like this, and I have what I need. So what I will do is just to give this a very nice swish using either my hand or any tool I have on hand, and then I'll take this behind camera to the low heat and melt this just until it's all totally melted. It doesn't need to bubble out or like boil, because it doesn't even boil. It's going to be like sugar when it's done, and then it automatically solidifies. So whatever shape you want to form out of an isomalt seal is done right after, you know, it comes off the heat. So you need to be careful whilst handling it so that you don't burn yourself or hurt yourself in the process. So I'll be right back to show you whilst I heat this up for about a minute or two, and then I'll show you what it looks like in the liquid state and how I'm going to be forming this into a seal using a silicone mat like this, a flexible silicone mat, so you can actually maneuver it and manipulate it anyhow you want. You're going to be needing some pegs, the regular pegs used to dry clothes, because you're going to need to use it to form some shapes. I will be doing that for you. And then anything that is heat proof, like a metal bowl like this, to sit it over so that it can form that shape, like a cup, when you need to get it out into that shape. If you use anything plastic, the heat might actually get it to melt. So that's why I picked up this. This is a blender bowl, all right? So anything can work as long as it's wide enough to sit it into what you want it to look like. So I'll be right back. So this is what it looks like. So I'm just going to go immediately. I'll pour this on the mat. At this point, I'm going to be trying to work very fast, trying to scrape everything out. I'll give this a quick spread like this, and then this is where I need this one. So I just simply carry it like this and place on top of this. So you see, this gives you the exact bowl shape I want it to have. So to give it a further effect, you can see that it's dripping around already. I will just connect it using the peg. So I'll just do it like this again. So the work of the peg is to keep it in the proper shape I want it to be before it gets solidified. And then the final one, same thing I'll do. So you'll see that it's just going to remain like that even when it has set properly. And it doesn't need to be kept in the freezer or anything. You just leave it at room temperature like this for just a few minutes, and you'll just see how it would become real rock hard in just a few seconds. So this is the final coating now. So this one I don't need to put too much because I already have the surface nicely covered enough, so we don't need too much on it. This is just to give it the original color it's supposed to have right now. Okay, so we're almost done covering now. You can see how I didn't have to use so much cream, and the cake is well covered. First, because it's a dark color. Second of all, because I already covered it generously with the white initially. First time, second time. I'm done covering the cake now, and I'm trying to get the sharp edges now. And this is how I always go about it. So I try to get the first stage of my sharp edge before I go for the final smoothing on the body like this. So once the edges are almost straight, and then I comb it one more time or two more times as the case may be, and then I will then tidy up the edges finally. I hope you all are still with me. It's been a long ride, but the result of the cake will be totally worth your time, I promise you. So now I'm going for the final run now, hopefully. So I start from the back as always, and I comb it. That's it. So this is the final sweep now. You can see how sharp those edges are. I find it very therapeutic whenever I'm getting my edges, because it takes calmness to get the perfect result, as you see right now. Okay, so trust me when I tell you that the best thing is to wear these black gloves anytime you're working on a colored cake. Otherwise, You all don't want to know how much of a mess my hands will have become by now, because really it's a strong color and it just typically stains everywhere. So right now I'm just going to um even out the surface, but don't cover in 100%. So now this is the part where we get to decorate this cake. The theme of the cake is black and gold. So this right here is a manual dust pump. Added some edible spirits into some edible metallic gold dust, mix it together, and I'm going to be using this pump to pass it out on the sides of the cake in an asymmetrical pattern. I'm going to start off from the back to make sure everything is all set before I get to the front. So basically by just going like this, try to keep my hands as steady as possible, like this. See, something like this. And then I go again here, the second part. So I'm going to deliberately leave this like a decor accent on the board. I'm not going to be cleaning this out because that's just how it's supposed to be. So I put a little more emphasis on the back again. Okay. I'm going to be adding some gold glitters at this point using another manual application like this. This gives it the glittery effect. It's a cake for a guy anyways, but I mean, just a little bit of glitters to give it a pop, because it's not going to be an overly dramatic cake, but I mean, just with the right amount of drama. Like this. See? And then same thing goes to the back. I would go in with some black pearls for just some extra effect. Alright. I'd use the tiny ones more than the bigger ones. Like this. Just in no particular order, basically. It's just to give it some extra little drama. Yeah. On the parts where we don't have gold, I'll put a few on the top of the cake. This is what the front of the cake looks like. And so at this point, I'll be getting the isomalt I prepped earlier, like this. So first I'll take off the pegs, and then I'll just invert this carefully, like this, to get it out. And then I'll just carefully take out the silicone mat. This is the reason why it has to be silicone, especially because it has to come off in the most flexible pattern as possible without breaking the seal. Okay, that's it. So this is what it looks like. And so this is going to be going on top of the cake like a bowl. I just simply place this in the center, no dramas, and that's because it's a cream cake, so you don't need any adhesive to fasten this. It just sticks automatically, and this is it. And then at this point, you just add a little bit of more, 1 or 2 balls to give it some extra touch to the front. So I go in with a ball here, go in with another one here. There's some black ones as well. Nothing too serious at this point, because the drama on the cake is supposed to be the isomalt. We don't want to ruin that with so many extras. So we do this. Try to add plain one here. So the last thing that's going to go on the cake is going to be the customized message, which reads Reynolds 40th, basically, just as the client requested. So I'm going to be putting this directly at the center. Yeah, to give this perfect illusion. I make this turn this so I can make sure that it's straight. All right. Apply some pressure so you can stay fixed. A little extra pressure in front.